Well, I've been very fortunate in that I've grown up with computers. My first computer was an IBM 8088 for those people who've been around the block a few times. That was IBM's first PC made in the early 80s. And at the time, it cost a little bit less than a Buick. And on a good day, it could do word processing and play a few games. As the computers developed and became more sophisticated, our uses for them became more sophisticated. I eventually used that same computer for almost 10 years, doing electronic music long before a lot of other people in the area were doing that sort of a thing. I started the Washington Trust Company in their computer operations in 1987. I was with them for 7 years, in which time they moved away from a old Honeywell system into the Unix IBM system. And with that development included different procedures, different backups. I started on quarter-inch tape running backups like you'd see in the old NASA footage, things along those lines. After the Washington Trust Company, I went to Foxwoods Casino in 1995. I was there till 2011. Worked for the Atrion Networking Corporation for a few months, doing consulting work for them. Moved into Providence Community Health Centers, a nonprofit up in Providence, for a year and a half. And I'm once again back at Foxwoods in the position of Unix engineer. And under that title falls storage manager, where I work with Mike Grillo, the principal engineer, in making sure that all of the casino's servers are backed up every night. So storage and backup is a major part of what I do professionally. I also collect music. I was a big Napster fan long before I actually had bandwidth. Before I had cable modem, I was doing all of this on a little tiny modem dialing up at 36K. And I would start downloading songs. This is going in the late 90s. I would start downloading songs and queue up 5 songs before I went to bed and see what I would get come morning. I have music that is older than my children, and my daughter is 16 and my son is 18. So all of that has survived 4 or 5 generations of computer upgrades where I have restored it from various forms of backup, including backup to CD or DVD media. That's my backup of last resort when nothing else is going right. So I've been bitten by hardware crashes. I have had data loss because of it. It has been very aggravating to me. So I am an evangelist when it comes to backups, and backups are not exciting. I could bore you with a ton of slides as to how we got to where we are today. I'm going to try and make this as interesting as possible. So why should we care? You wouldn't drive your car without insurance. Why? Because it's insurance. It's, for the worst case scenario, something to protect me. Now, a dirty secret about computers is that the actual hardware, the monitor, the motherboard, all of the pieces and gizmos inside aren't really worth that much value. They're worth a couple $100 on a good day. Sometimes they're not honestly worth the effort to get rid of them. But the data that we use on it, whether it's our business records, our tax records, our family photos, movies of the grandchildren, some of these are irreplaceable. So if we were to lose that data, it can cost us anywhere from hundreds or thousands of dollars to not being able to get it back at any price. Most people, when they're asked if your house was on fire and you get your loved ones out the door, what's the number one thing you reach for? Most people will say their family pictures. Well, we live in an age now where those family pictures are no longer kept on negatives or on prints or slides or anything else. That's zeros and ones, probably on a hard drive, might be on a laptop, might be on a desktop. And in the case of a fire, you grab the screen and go, and you realize, I just took the monitor outside. Well, this is one way that you can avoid the stress by knowing that your pictures or whatever data that you find valuable, what you use computers for, is backed up someplace else. Little poll of the room. How many people here use Microsoft Windows? And any Apple people? 2 Apple people. Okay. This actually does work for both. This presentation is for both sides. There's some very, very good products from Microsoft. Apple actually includes a product built into its operating system that we'll cover in a little bit. Now, the next slide is something that is an analogy that I've created, and that many of us think of our computers the same way we think of our microwave ovens. We don't really like to think of how they work. You know, you wake up in the morning, you want your breakfast sandwich heated, you toss it in, you push the button, the microwave goes for 2 minutes or whatever the time is, and you don't really think about your microwave for the rest of the day. Well, a computer isn't really like that. It's a sophisticated device, and it needs a little bit more maintenance. It needs a little bit more thought. It needs to be thought of in the same way we think of our cars. You know, we change our oil on our cars, we make sure there's air pressure in the tires. There's a certain amount of knowledge. You don't need to be a mechanic to operate a car, but you do have to understand a little bit as to how the pieces are working underneath the covers. Otherwise, you're going to start running into trouble. You know, you start finding out that you haven't changed the oil in 20 or 30,000 miles, and it's going to start biting back at you. A computer is very much in the same way. We demand that it operate on almost a moment's notice, from almost nothing to almost all of its capacity, in all kinds of operating temperatures and environments. It's a really remarkable thing that it works at all. Trust me, I'm amazed myself. I wish. I actually did get to sit in one about 3 weeks ago. There's a dealer up in Massachusetts that I actually got to visit, and I'm like, you know, if I were wealthy, I would do this. So, computers require maintenance. Now, some of this maintenance is really, really easy to do. Driver updates, operating system updates. If you're a Windows person, you've heard of Windows Update. It probably pops up a little box saying Windows would like to reboot because it's installed these features. The best thing you can do for either Apple or for a Microsoft system is to let it automatically update. Just tell me when you want to reboot and we'll reboot. What it does is, for people who aren't engineers, it fixes a lot of security problems. It fixes problems within the operating system that the people who get paid to do this for a living get to fix. And one of the best things you can do is to automatically, just whenever you have an update, send it to me and just do it. There are two other aspects of this, which is antivirus and anti-malware. Again, antivirus is more on the Microsoft side. I'm not going to say there's no malware for an Apple, because that's becoming more and more common as more people move to Apple as a platform. The hackers and the virus writers, lovely human beings that they are, have been targeting those platforms a little bit more. But Microsoft provides a wonderful platform built into its operating system called Microsoft Security Essentials. You can pay for a McAfee or a Kaspersky or some of the other professional grade antivirus platforms. They are all good, but I don't like spending more money than I have to, so I use Microsoft Security Essentials, and it does a rather good job. I was actually quite impressed when my CIO and I were actually discussing the ins and outs of it. And for the price, which is free, I'm very much a big fan of Microsoft Security Essentials. Anti-malware. Malware is different from virus. A virus is actually a piece of code that you accidentally download, and it opens up backdoors into your system. Malware can do things such as hijack your internet browser. If you've ever seen the message, you are a winner, please click here in order to collect your prize, or something along those lines, and it takes you to some site that you never desired or even knew of. It's an example of malware. Malware is a little bit different in how it looks for these kinds of pieces of code. It's primarily aimed at your internet surfing. I use Malwarebytes. I've used it for Linda a couple of times. I'm a big believer in it. There are a few others. Again, if you Google 5 best malware programs out there, you'll get a decent return. And finally, the one that I'm here really to talk most about is backups, because we really don't do it well. I live this. I make my money by doing backups. And even I have problems in trying to maintain a very real backup environment. Computer. Now, I will confess, this is actually my own hand-built personal computer. And this is where the CPU is, your memory, motherboard. What you don't see is the hard drive because it's over here in the back. But one of the dirty secrets about computers is that virtually, other than the hard drive, every other component inside your computer loses whatever data is in it when you unplug it or when you turn it off. When you kill the power, the only thing that is storing your information, your data, and that's the operating system, your Windows, your OS X, all of your files, is the hard drive. This is a hard drive with the lid taken off of it. It's set up, the primary thing that stores your information is the metal platters. There's usually 4 or 5 of them. They spin anywhere between 5,000 and 15,000 RPM, which is in excess of 75 miles an hour. If your computer is on, these disks are spinning. And some of the times they spin for 24/7 for months and months and months at a time. This arm, of which there is an arm for each platter underneath in this cylinder, each one of these arms rests only a few molecules above the actual metal heads, the metal of the disk. If the arm touches the disk, you've lost data. The most easy way you can have the arm touch the disk is to kill the power to the computer while the disk is still spinning. Doesn't happen every time, but it's the easiest way to do it. The other component that can fail is underneath here is a little chip and a little smart device which acts as the controller that speaks through these jacks back to the rest of the computer. All of these parts are sensitive to heat, and because this is a physical disk that's spinning all the time, it has a motor in it. Second law of thermodynamics, it makes heat as part of energy loss. This is just a simple ball bearing drive, just like any other ball bearing drive, but again, this is going to be one of your weak points because if your ball bearings fail, the disk seizes up and you've lost data. Any one of these pieces dies, you've lost the usability of the hard drive. One out of every 12 hard drives that leaves the factory will fail within 2 years. This keeps me up at night. That is from a Google study that took 100,000 hard drives in their data centers. And they use consumer grade hard drives. They use the same thing that I'll buy at Newegg or that I can buy over at Staples or Best Buy or any of those other places. And within the first, out of the box, in the first 3 months, you'll get a 3% failure rate, simply from powering it on and taking it out of the box from the factory. And even after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years later, that rate of failure continues. So within 5 years, there is probably better than a 1 in 4 chance that your hard drive is going to crash. Yeah, that's the worst part of the speech right there. Now, if you back up your hard drive, and this is vitally important, you cannot back up your hard drive to the same hard drive. And it makes sense. But what we can do is, because Windows and Apple are terribly smart, we can take this hard drive and we can chop it up into bits. So that you can see a C drive, and that's on a certain amount of this. And then you can see a D drive, and that's on the same drive, theoretically. And I don't want this to be too terribly confusing, but here's a logical example of one physical disk divvied up into various partitions. And what you don't want to do is to back up your OS, which is your primary partition, on the same physical drive. Best practices demand important data be stored on no fewer than 3 physical hard drives, preferably in 2 locations, so that if you have a fire, if your pipes break, if you have water damage, fire damage, anything along those lines, that data is safe at another location. And there are ways of doing that which are fairly painless. There are ways that are doing that that are fairly painful. Ways we can back data up. You can back it up to CD or DVD, the little disks. Now, they work well, relatively quick to make. I can bring them from house to house without having to worry too much about them, but they're too small to be practical. A CD only holds 600 meg of data. And for those of you who are not really familiar with how big things are, we're going to get to a chart about that in a second. A DVD holds about 5 gigabytes of data. And that sounded like an awful lot 10 years ago, but it is less and less now all the time. So they're really too small to be practical for most of what I have for my data now. Flash drives, thumb drive is actually sitting out of Linda's laptop right there. And we are also now making hard drives that are built out of flash rather than out of physical platters that spin. Those have started out very small, but they're getting larger. They exist now up to a full terabyte for the enterprise grade. That's still prohibitively expensive for the consumer grade. But I almost guarantee within 5 years' time, we will still have physical hard drives, but most of your work is going to be off of a flash drive, only because it is immensely faster.
What's the difference between a hard drive and a flash drive?
A hard drive has those platters that we saw before, and they are physically spinning. A flash drive is made of memory that, unlike the memory in your computer, will actually hold its data even if the power is lost. So there's no moving parts in a flash drive. It's all electronic read-write memory. And it is immensely fast. As a general rule, if you were to replace the hard drive in your laptop with a SSD drive, which is the solid state device, I believe is what it stands for, if I remember correctly, you will see the kind of improvement in performance simply because you don't have to wait for that disk to catch on up. I find it makes it about 20% faster without having to add any memory, without having to add processor, just by swapping the means that you're writing to on your laptop. Flash drives, they're small, they're fast, they're not really cheap. 128 gig right now is going to run you between $50 and $75. That's not very big for a laptop drive. 500 gig drives, but about $300 right now. So it's not great, but it's okay. Most enterprise backup solutions love tape. Tape is the cheapest way that we can back data up and hold it for long periods of time. We have successfully restored tape data from the Apollo missions. So we've got 30, 40, 50 years of zeros and ones written to magnetic media that we can still get back in this day and age. 30 years right now is what the tape manufacturers suggest. The problem with tape is it's immensely slow, and it's expensive for a consumer grade. A good tape drive runs about $1,000, which is probably outside of the range of what anyone here wants to pay. If you're backing up lots of systems to one tape drive, it makes sense, but it's very, very expensive. So hard drives for everyone in this room is probably the cheapest dollar per gigabyte that you're going to get for backups. And whether that hard drive is physically in your machine, or remotely attached to your machine, or attached to your network through the cloud, a hard drive is probably going to be the best way to back up whatever data you have. Certainly.
Just to know how much trouble I'm in. I back up all my documents and photos off my laptop on an 8 gig flash drive.
Mm-hmm.
Takes about 3.5 gig.
Yep.
Because I don't have a ton of big stuff. I don't back up programs and things like that, but this way I don't want to lose those photos.
No, absolutely not.
And I just soon not rewrite documents. But I mean, I've got a hard drive backup too.
Mm-hmm.
Which I don't do as religiously as I do with flash drive. I mean, is that a feasible sort of?
That is a feasible. That actually counts as one backup in your same location. So that one. So not bad. Better than nothing.
But it'd be good to do it on 2 flash drives and keep one.
And keep one in a desk, even if you put it in a desk drawer at the office, desk drawer at a relative's house, someplace else where it's not physically in the same location. How much storage do I need? Well, one of the answers you're going to get from me today is that there is no absolute correct answer. If there was an absolute correct answer, I'd be out of a job, because everyone would just simply do that answer and we would go with it. When computers were first being built by IBM, we started with the basic idea of storage, which was the byte. A byte is 8 bits, which is 8 zeros and ones in one unit. A kilobyte which is pretty much what for the first 10 to 20 years of computer technology was mostly kilobytes. It was 1,000 bytes. Megabytes, million. Gigabytes, billion. And terabyte, trillion. Beyond that, the quadrillion would be the petabyte, and then the quintillion would be the exabyte. A large industry, such as Google, has several exabytes of backup information. If you can think of that. And I know of corporations in the tri-state area that have petabyte backups. So it's impressive. Now, an Office document like this PowerPoint presentation, short of the JPEGs, is going to be about a 2 meg file, 2 million bytes. Stairway to Heaven on an MP3, about 12 meg. An album, and yes, I know I'm dating myself in the fact that I'm talking about albums, is about 60 meg. Every album that Pink Floyd has ever produced will run you about a gigabyte of space, and Game of Thrones Season 1 will run you about 5. Game of Thrones Season 1 through 4, ripped from Blu-ray at high definition, is just shy of a 1/4 terabyte to store all of that video, sound, and information. So it starts small. I only started by downloading a few songs a night, and I am personally running in my home a NAS of 22 terabytes, and it's almost full. But I need a 12-step program for storage, so it's a whole nother personal issue. Moore's law is something that we talk about in computer engineering. It says that processing power will double every 2 years. So the computer that you buy 2 years from now will be just about twice as powerful as the computer you have today. The converse of that is that the cost of processing the same amount of information is halved every 2 years. In the last decade, we've gotten that down to about 18 months. Kreider's law is the equivalent rule in storage, that storage capacity will double every 18 months, and that cost of storage will also be cut in half every 18 months. This is held true up till about 2005. Both of these have kind of hit a little bit of a peak on their efficiency. We are actually reaching the engineering limits as to how small we can write the transistors onto a circuit board. They're only right now about 12 nanometers wide on an IBM chip. They think they can get it down to 7. I was talking to an absolute brilliant engineer at IBM who was very, very enthusiastic at getting down to 7 nanometers. But until we actually manage it, it's getting a little bit less crazy, but for the most part, that still does hold. This is how I back up. And this is actually the same model of the device which is in my office at home. This is called a NAS. It's Network Attached Storage. It is, in essence, a PC for storing data. It has a little tiny operating system built in Unix. It goes on, it gets a network connection just like your PC. This one holds 6 hard drives of up to 6 terabytes per drive. I currently have 2 6 terabyte, 2 3 terabyte, and 2 2 terabyte in this particular machine. You access it through the network. It's easy to manage. It has this nice graphical interface, so you can say, okay, I want this folder, I want this permissions, and so on. It's terribly, terribly nerdy. I really, really love this, but it is expensive. The chassis costs a little under $1,000 without any hard drives in it.
Chris, what is the physical dimension of that?
Honestly, it's a black box, a little bit bigger, about as big as the amplifier on the floor. It weighs about as much. It's not that big at all. I mean, it stands about yay by yay by yay. It looks a little black box. And setting it up the first time can be complex. Again, you really need to know what is it I'm trying to do and where do I want to put it. I love this thing. It's probably a little heavy for a lot of end users. So we have the external hard drive. It attaches to your PC via USB. It can come in one sealed unit like this one is. I'm a big fan of this toaster-looking unit on the side. This costs about $25 to $30 on Amazon. It will take any SATA hard drive, no matter how fast. It just drops right into these little flaps here, make a socket for it. And if you have an extra hard drive that's come out of an old machine, you can reposition it for a backup hard drive. And all you really need to do is use a Sharpie to write down backup or something on it's ugly, but it's cheap and it is amazingly efficient. I really can't recommend this item. If you're not doing backups right now, for $25 and a spare hard drive that you can get almost for next to nothing, this is a very, very good solution. I'm a big believer in that. Backups versus archive really depends on what is it you're trying to do. Archive data you need to think about as data that you just want a copy of, that you don't really intend to change it ever. Your tax returns from 5 years ago would be a good example of archive data. Not likely to be any changes made, but you really don't want to lose it either. A backup data is a lot more for recovery in case you have a crash on your existing PC. Backup data could be drivers, it could be your operating system files, it could be the PowerPoint presentation that you just finished writing. It could be lots of different things, but things that might have more changes to them more regularly. Backup is different from mirroring in the sense that in a case study, I worked for a corporation that had these 2 servers in different locations. Now we said 3 hard drives in 2 different locations was best practice. Well, we had 2 hard drives in 2 locations, and every time they would write to one, it would mirror that change to the other one. We're protected, right? Even if we were to lose this server, the other server has the data. If we were to lose the network link between the 2, both servers have their data. There's only one problem with that. What happens if you delete a file off this one? Well, it sends the message and it deletes the file off that one. I want it back. Well, we don't have it. Well, if you have file corruption, or more likely, if you have a user that deletes a file that you really didn't want to delete, trust me, it's one of the ways I make my living, mirroring does work well for some things, but it is not the equivalent of a backup. It is not the same. It does not protect you in the same way. Full backups versus incremental. I guarantee this is going to be the most boring portion of the talk right here. A full backup is every single file on your computer. Every Windows temporary file, every driver, every DLL, every screenshot, background, JPEG you have, perfectly copied from your C drive to another location. And whether or not you honestly need that is something that you need to determine for yourself. I had, up till a week ago, my laptop was stolen out of my car, as a matter of fact. But at the time, there was nothing on it that I really cared about. It had an operating system on it. I can reinstall an operating system. It had a couple games on it. I can reinstall those. It had this presentation, which was one of my 3 locations, but was not my only copy. But I could afford to lose anything on it because I didn't have anything on it worth saving. The actual hardware I got at a pawn shop down the road from the casino for only $150. So I'm not really thrilled about it, but I'll live. I didn't need to save the operating system. I didn't need to save anything that was on that anyplace else. I could afford to lose the data on it because I had it backed up elsewhere. Incremental backups are backups that only back up the files that have changed since your full backup. So if you've done a full backup, and full backups take a while, especially for an enormously large hard drive. Once that full backup is done, an incremental will only back up the files that you've changed. So if you go into a Word document, you change a word, it'll back that up. If you have system files that are temporary, it'll back those up. But it takes a lot less time. So you run your full backup on a Sunday, and it takes all night long. And I'm going to get to that on the next slide. But your incremental may only take 10 minutes on the next one. A Delta backup only does files that have changed since your last backup. So if you've done a Delta backup on Monday night, your Tuesday night backups are only going to go back to the changes that have happened since Monday. Your incremental backups will continue to go back to your last full backup. And I'm going to show you, it's going to actually be very clear on the next slide. So, Sunday, here's your full backup. Everything that's on your hard drive. And Monday, you have a little bit of change. Tuesday, you've made some more changes. It gets a little bit bigger. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This backup continues to get larger and larger and larger until Saturday. you're running about half the size of what your full backup is running. Now, the good news on this is that if you do have a crash, all you have to do is restore your full backup and whatever last incremental backup you had. You only have to go back so far. The bad side of this is that by your Saturday night, you're running time-wise on your incrementals almost as much as you're running full. For a personal computer, it really doesn't matter so much. If you're running 24/7 operation with lots of servers and you're staggering your backups so that you can fit them within a 24-hour window, this actually becomes a little bit more complicated. Actually becomes a lot more complicated. Your Delta backups, you back up the full, it makes a change, makes another change, it's still little, makes another change, it's still little. So your time between the backups, again, is small. But if you have a crash and you crash on Saturday, you not only have to back up the full, but you have to hit each one of these changes to get your data back. Again, it saves you a little bit of time in the backup, but if you have a problem, it is certainly more of a pain in the patoot in order to get you restore. Best practices. Number one, your backup should be automated. If you walk out of here with nothing else from this talk, it is please automate your backup. I don't run manual backups as often as I should. I do on occasion. And basically all that means is that you set it for midnight on a Saturday night, sometime when you're not going to be using your computer, and plug in the hardware and you can leave the hardware plugged in. There's no harm in leaving a USB drive attached to your computer all the time. But at Saturday night, it starts the backup and it writes it on out and you have an extra copy of it and it's secure. Automate your backups because quite frankly, we don't remember. Humans are not very good at doing this on a manual basis. Data retention should be tiered. Again, that goes back a little bit as to your fulls and your incrementals. It doesn't have to be that complicated for your home machine. Ideally, you should have multiple historic copies. This is done through your backup software so that if you make a change and it writes to the backup, and you make another change and it writes to the backup, and you really didn't like the change that you made, you can go back 2 backups to get the one that you want to get back again. And that can happen if you get hit by a virus. It can happen if you get hit by malware. It can happen if you just change something that you decide you don't want after all. And backups really should be tested. Now, this is difficult to do in a home environment because we have usually one computer, we have our backup. If you try and restore and it doesn't work, you've turned your main computer into a brick. So you don't really want to do it that way. The way that I do it is I use virtual machines, which is really nerdy, but what it essentially does is it makes a software version of a new computer running on your hardware computer. I use VMware, but there's also a VirtualBox by Oracle, which is free. VMware costs a bit of money. But it's a great way if you want to play with a new operating system. If you have Windows 7 and you're like, boy, I really don't know if I want to go to Windows 8 with all those tiles or sort of thing, it's a great way to install it, play with it. If you don't like it, you can throw it away. Testing is very difficult to do with just one computer and one backup. But if you don't test, the only way you're going to find out that it doesn't work is when you try it and it fails. The hardest part of backups is creating a backup strategy. What is it that I honestly need? What is it that I want to save? What is it that I need to save? What I want to save and what I need to save may be 2 different things. I would like to save Game of Thrones Blu-ray ripped at 250 gigabytes. I would like to save that, but I'm not willing to shell out another 10 terabytes of backup space in order to do so. So again, and this is going to be different for every person in the room. Locate your data. Sounds easy. I live this, and I don't know where all my data is, honestly. It's a good idea to know where your documents reside. It's a good idea to know where your favorites reside. In Windows, it's fairly easy. You have a user group, your user, and I have a whole bunch of folders in there that has my pictures, my videos, my documents, my favorites. So you can pretty much back up that one whole user directory and you're in pretty good shape. Set up a schedule For your first full backup, do it overnight. Trust me, you just want to go to sleep, forget about it, check it the next day. Test recovery, we've discussed that a little bit. It's not as easy as it sounds. Store a copy of it off-site. Again, it sounds really, really good. I prefer you do it, but there are some practicalities that are involved. And what to back up. You know, we discussed documents, media, which is your pictures, your movies, your audio files, your favorites, because if you spend a lot of time on the internet, and I spend a lot of time on the internet, your favorites can be just as valuable as your documents, because trying to remember, where did I find it? Google is good. Google is really, really good. There are very few things I can't find by Googling again, but that makes it a lot easier. This next one is going to be where you probably will run into some problems, your application data. Application data will be things like your templates. If you run any databases or proprietary software that writes to locations other than your My Documents, a lot of times you'll find it in C program files or C program files x86 and a whole bunch of subfolders after that. Of all of the things on here, that one is going to be the hardest one to actually determine where your data lies. And the final one, which not too many people do, again, it depends on how valuable it is, a system snapshot, which is basically your Windows registry and all of the system files that would go along with that. And again, as I just said, this is where most of the stuff that you've placed out there, your My Users, My Documents folders you've created. Apple, for the Apple people here. The backup application that comes with OS X is Time Machine, and it is fantastically good. I wish Microsoft had a built-in application as good as what Apple provides for nothing. It's historical, it runs a full backup to start with and incrementals after that, it runs automatically, and it works fantastically well. There are third-party applications for Apple. I don't know why anybody bothers. I cannot say enough good things about this application. Windows has a lot more choices because Microsoft doesn't include anything by default. I personally recommend all three of these. Carbonite, which has been a major player in the backup field for more than a decade now. It's easy to use. Acronis True Image is another fantastic good program in that it can be as deep or as simple as you'd like it to be. And a new software that I've just found out about in the last 6 months, Crash Plan by Code 42, is a local company which makes a really, really good product. I have just started using this for free. Little disclosure, they did give me a free year, not to shill it here, but because I work for Foxwoods, to give it a demo for within the organization. Any one of these will work, and there's a bunch of others. Again, if you Google backup applications, Windows, you're going to get a phone book, but I can personally recommend. I'll leave that up there so people can write down the names.
About how much they cost?
Roughly about $100, and that does sound like a lot of money. Some of these will, again, it's one of those, a lot of them have tiers where you can buy in some of their cloud as well as portions of their backup service. Code 42 does a lot with the cloud, which we're going to get to in a minute.
Chris, I've tried a few, I'm not smart enough, but I have a son-in-law.
Yeah, you have a guy.
There are free backup programs, but I noticed that none of them seem to work as advertised so far. I mean, especially after time.
I am not a huge fan of free software, only because I have generally found you get what you pay for. When my Code 42 1 year free is used up, I will probably shell out the money for their product only because I think it's a good product. But any one of those three, you're going to pay some money. But again, it's like changing your oil or buying insurance on your car. In many ways, it is the price of doing business.
Don't I get a program when I buy a hard drive that backs up, that comes with the drive?
Sometimes. Yeah, if you buy an external hard drive and it includes software with it, that's a good solution. It's free, but really what it is it's a paid-for version that the hard drive manufacturer has bought the license for to include in the package. Yes, Alan?
Of course, I have an external hard drive, and when I plug it into my computer, I have absolutely no idea what's happening. I mean, nothing comes up on the screen.
Mhm.
There's a little light that blinks.
Mm-hmm.
So how can I tell if I'm backing up systems, if I'm doing incremental, if I'm doing, how do I know what it's doing?
Well, there's two answers to that. Microsoft has an application that lets you look at what hard drives are out there. See, now I'm under pressure and I can't remember the name of the actual command. I will get back to you on that. But
I just need,
it will show you the virtual drives. It will not show you the physical drives.
It'll show you the external.
It will show you the external hard drive, yes.
but then how do I know what it's doing? I mean, how do I know?
It's not doing anything.
It's not, when you plug in the external hard drive as a general rule,
Yeah.
Windows will automatically recognize that it's a hard drive.
Yeah.
Unless you have software installed, that's all it does.
It just recognizes that it's a hard drive?
Yes.
So I haven't been backing up.
I'm not going to speak to that. Without actually looking at it, I will not speak to that statement. But the general process is you plug in the external hard drive, it will recognize the external hard drive, and unless you have a command linked to that function, it's not running a backup for you.
Oh my gosh.
And by the way, 1 in 12 hard drives will fail within the first... Yes.
But usually, the external hard drive, it'll flash on the screen, when it's backed up.
And mine doesn't flash on the screen, it blinks, that's all it does.
I think, yeah, we might need to get together and take a look at that.
I have an external hard drive, I bought a new computer last
Yep.
year, and my son, who is a computer engineer, got me to buy an external hard drive, which I used, and I would look at that drive, and, you know, it has a ribbon, you know, goes across,
Mhm.
and it's only got this much on it, and so when he was over at Christmas, after I'd owned the thing for like 6 months, I said, I don't think this thing's really backing up. It says, you know, that it's going to do a backup now every Sunday morning, but I don't think it's backing up because that ribbon doesn't get any bigger. But he went up and looked at it, he said, Mom, there's so many tera, whatever it is, on that hard drive, that you're not gonna live long enough to fill that thing, believe me.
And so what's probably happening is it probably ran a backup of, and I'm speculating here, wildly, by the way. It probably ran a full backup and has been running little tiny incrementals on that because you probably don't make a lot of data for the changes.
Yeah,
So over a year's time, it probably hasn't added all that much to it. So that,
that's it. He said you can't read how much data this is. Oh.
yeah,
Chris, I was just gonna say, again, I'm a kludge, but, I've got a drive that I back up, I told you, I've got a flash drive.
yep.
To check that, what I do is, I go to that drive,
Mhm.
I open it, I look for a file that I created recently,
Right,
and if it's there,
it's
the
there.
backup is working.
Right.
If it's not there, you got a problem.
That's perfectly adequate. Now, how many people have done this? Have looked at it and it says OS not found on your laptop and
Mine pops up and it says 2000 something, and it's been copied.
yeah,
It's backed up.
yep. And
I keep it plugged in all the time.
that's a good thing to do. You can do that.
Unplug it.
That's not a bad place.
The little lights on all the time.
If you don't run a backup, if you have not been, and these are very good examples, the people, you know, the very fact that you're here listening to me talk about this shows that you're thinking a little bit more about it than a lot of people do. But if you have not run a backup and your hard drive crashes, all is not quite lost. Everyone take a deep breath. What is your data worth? What they can do is you will take the hard drive out of your laptop or your PC and you send it to these gentlemen in the fancy clean rooms and they disassemble it while keeping the hard drive bathed in inert gas so it doesn't react with anything. And then they spin and map every sector that they can read of the hard drive. And they can recover I know 2 people that work in forensics that do forensic data recovery for lawsuits and for Attorney General and for other places like that. And it can be recovered. It is ridiculously expensive. A hard drive recovery can cost you from several hundred to several $1,000 to have these gentlemen in the fancy knickerbockers go and map the drive for you. And it's not guaranteed, because if that head dropped onto a place of the data that you wanted it to be at, you'll get a lot, but you may not get it all. Go ahead.
I have a record digital photo in my laptop.
Okay.
All my pictures are there.
Yes.
Now, when this thing backs up, does it back up the new ones?
I will not speak to anyone's individual backup in the room, okay? It should. I would look very carefully at your backup software and see the locations that it's pulling down. When I had showed you what data do I want to back up, that whole slide is kind of trying to figure out where am I storing things and why do I need to back them on up. Knowing where your data is the first step in understanding how we're going to back up all of this information. And the final portion of the talk here is going to be discussing what is the cloud. Now, I work for a wonderfully large organization that has raised floor computer rooms and steel racks that stand taller than I do, full of hard drives and servers and high-end hardware that go rack after rack after rack. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, all of the big players have data centers very similar to this, where you will see rack after rack after rack of hard drives and servers made available to their organizations. The cloud that you're going to hear about takes a little tiny slice of this industry-grade computing power and offers it to you as a rental. So you would log into an Amazon. Anyone here use Dropbox? Dropbox is a prime example of a little tiny slice of their organization that they make available to you for a price. Cloud providers, Amazon services for corporations is far and away one of the largest cloud providers for businesses. Dropbox is very, very popular. I use it because it's easy to share out to other people. Google Drive, iCloud for the Apple people here, OneDrive from Microsoft. They're working really hard to become a player in the cloud field. SimForm is a company that not too many people know about. It has a really neat pricing method where you can either pay money for their service or you can contribute portions of your storage. If you have an extra hard drive, if you have available storage, you can offer it up to them for them to write to in a secure method, and they will give some of their storage available to you. So you trade some of your storage for some of theirs rather than paying money. I've used them. I have close to a terabyte of cloud storage. Yeah, I know. We'll talk about that 12-step program later, which is unheard of. There are a lot of businesses that don't need a terabyte of cloud storage. But it's just an interesting company. I've used them, and I've been fairly impressed with their market. Again, there are probably 50 cloud providers of storage out on the internet. You Google it, you're going to hit the phone book. But any one of these vendors is reputable, is large enough, you know they're going to be there tomorrow. When you ask about cloud storage, they're offering you a sliver of their data. And what you need to ask them, and what they need to answer truthfully, because you're going to talk to sales guys that are not always in possession of the facts. How much data can I upload? Dropbox, if you have a free account, it's 10 gigabytes. You can pay, I think it's like $6 a month for 100 gigabytes, and then it ramps up after that. Many of these services will be free for you to upload data, but will cost you money to download it back again. So when you can upload your backup for nothing, but it may cost you coming back down the other way. That's a lot more common in the industry standards as opposed to consumer grade. If you're paying a monthly fee, you can usually go both ways without a problem. How fast is that data going to come back down across? Again, you can see fairly rapid upload times but downloading it back again from the cloud, you'll see slower speeds. That's simply the part of the price of doing business, is just something you need to be aware of. Does the service allow preceding? Preceding is the best way of backing up large portions of data. So you would take, if you wanted to be part of Amazon, and you buy part of their cloud service, and you say, I want to precede my data. They said, okay, send us a hard drive. So you would write to that hard drive at your home, and you'd wrap it up in bubble tape and send it FedEx to Amazon, and they would take that drive and plug it into their system, write the data off of it. It is much, much faster to upload large amounts of data through a USB cable than it is through a network. The network is the slowest portion of your PC, far and away by none. And I'm going to catch a lot of flack from any network guys out there for saying it. But the fact of the matter is, your USB port, your FireWire port, whatever it is that connects that hard drive locally to your PC, has a much, much bigger pipe than most of your network. And lastly, cloud storage is a service. You pay a monthly fee. For Dropbox, that's $6, $7 for 100 gigabytes. There will come a time when you decide that maybe I don't want to spend my $6, $7 that way. Well, okay, you stop paying, and that data is gone. They will just take that little segment that they gave to you and give it to someone else. They won't see your data. They'll just write zeros over the top of it, but there's no getting it back after you stop paying. There's definitely a cost associated with the cloud, but again, it depends on what it is that you want to pay for. If it's worth it to you for that $6, $7, it's the same price as Netflix. Not a bad thing. Taking questions all the way through the thing. Go ahead.
How secure is it?
Well, that really is an interesting question. There's lots of people that will tell you that the cloud is very secure. I have heard some stories that it is not quite as secure as a lot of the salespeople would like it to be. If you have truly confidential data and you are not running encryption on your cloud backup, I would say it is not secure. Again, this really depends on what is it that I'm backing up. If it's my financial data for my business, I would look very carefully at security keys and at a lot more deeper aspects than I'm really prepared to go into today. Anyone else? I only thought it was going to be 20 minutes. But it's worthwhile. It's something we don't think about, but the fact of the matter is that our computers are really not that valuable without the data upon them. The tools that we use them for give them their value. And the data that we back up, the data that's important to us, is really worth keeping.
Well, as I mentioned, I do have a little hard drive that backs up every Sunday. But the whole thing of having another copy off-site, so that if the house burned down and you weren't home, you couldn't grab it. Would it be convenient? Like, I have thousands of pictures on my computer, on my picture note. Would it make sense to just put those on a flash drive and store that at my son's house?
That would be an acceptable backup scenario. The flash drive, you can get 64 gig flash drives now for about $50.
And how much would that hold?
Picture-wise?
Thousands of pictures?
Thousands. Tens of thousands, I would say.
Oh, okay.
Tens of thousands. Yeah, picture is about, picture is up to several hundred meg, depending on the height of the camera.
My son came over to transfer all my data over. That's when I learned I had over 6,000 pictures I had.
Video takes a lot of space. Pictures don't actually take up that much space in things. The music takes up some, video takes up a lot, and it takes it up very, very quickly. Again, it really depends on if those pictures are something you want to save. You may be able to write those out to a DVD and just put them in a safety deposit box if you have one.
You could put 6,000 pictures on a DVD?
I don't think you can put 6,000 pictures on the DVD, but you can put 1,000 pictures on the DVD maybe. The flash drive will hold them for a long, long time.
What's the future of storage, or backup protection, or whatever?
You're actually hitting upon an argument that is between my manager and a person at EMC. And my manager truly believes that flash drives are going to be the wave of the future, that flash drives will make today's hard drives look like zip disks were from 15 years ago. The guy at EMC believes that because physical hard drives will continue to get cheaper, that flash drives will never truly overtake them for massive amounts of storage. Flash drives are fast, physical hard drives are large, and there's a trade-off as to how much you want to use the money for, as to do you want speed or do you want size. If I could see the future, I would know what stock to invest in. I truly believe that flash drives will become, as far as an operating system drive, your mainstays for within the next 5 years. We're already almost there. Whether or not you see these NASs, like large storage devices going to flash architecture, still being panned out. We don't know where the future is going to be on that.
I'm not familiar with like the iPhone with the pictures or the iPad and the pictures. I have an iPad, but I don't use it much. But anyway, you have an iPhone, which I don't have. How do you get those pictures that you've taken somewhere else and place them somewhere else and get rid of them? I don't know, what is the connection?
Okay. The connection is the cloud. Now, iPhone. I take a picture. My iPhone is synced to my iCloud Apple account. So when my phone takes the picture, it uploads a copy to Apple's cloud. So there's still a copy on my phone, and there's also a copy on the cloud.
So if you delete it there, it stays in the cloud.
If I delete it here, it can stay in the cloud, yes. And again, it will do what you tell it to do. The silly computers, they do whatever it is we tell them. And the question is, are we telling them the right things? So a lot of times your phone will show you what's in the cloud and what's on the actual device. But Apple does it under the covers. Apple does it really without telling you about it, which is both really nice and somewhat alarming sometimes. Because if there is a break in security, a breach in security of something that you don't control, you can find your pictures may not be as secure as you thought they were. There was a lot of the celebrity picture hack that you heard about, was about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, was a phishing attempt. It was basically when hackers were able to get the accounts of the celebrities, but then they were able to get those celebrities' personal pictures that way. So yes, the cloud can be secure, but it's only really as secure as the people that are guarding the keys to it.
You don't take pictures of yourself naked, it's not real.
Or, you take one picture of yourself naked, you put it right in the front, and you never look at anything else.
That's right. They hit that one picture, and that's it. We're done. We're not looking at it anymore.
Chris, you mentioned the failure rate on drives.
Yes.
Hard drives. Flash drives.
Flash drives fail. Flash drives have a limit of writes. As a read-only device, they do fairly well. But a flash drive will be written to, last I saw, and this is going back probably more than a year at this point, was about 200 to 300 writes per sector on a flash drive. Now, a flash drive gets away with that by recognizing the bad sectors in a way that sometimes the hard drive can't, and will mark those sectors as bad, so your flash drive will get a little bit smaller and a little bit smaller over time. Flash drive is not bulletproof. If you want a bulletproof backup solution, tape is not bad, and if you're willing to pay for it, the cloud is not bad, because when you buy the cloud, you are getting that multiple disk drive in multiple physical locations automatically. That's part of what you're getting. But you're linked to them forever. Your checking account, you will be paying on a monthly basis. not great. There is no ideal solution. If there was one solution for every person in the room, this would have been a 5-minute presentation.
So have you protected our museum?
The museum has what's called mirroring built into it. So it has 2 hard drives which are identical. So you write to one, it makes a copy to the other. It then also has a backup function through Dell to write out a full backup and then incremental backups to the cloud.
And it does it automatically?
It does it automatically.
Which we've got to look at.
Which we have to look at because Dell is going to discontinue the service, and that was part of what has inspired a little bit of this.
Well, thank you. You've given us all night.
Welcome to my world. Thank you.